Hi, my name is Sammy, and I'll be presenting the positive argument for drone usage in modern warfare. Drones are unmanned aerial vehicles controlled by either remote pilots on the ground or via pre-programmed missions. We may think of them now as vehicles that make really cool footage in YouTube videos, but the technology was first used by the military nearly 90 years ago. Drones were originally used in the 1930s as target practice for military aircraft training. It was cheaper to shoot a drone out of the sky than another airplane. Their more strategic usage by the military began in the 1960s when they were used for surveillance and reconnaissance. In the 1970s, the U.S. military sold its technology and research to the Israeli government, who developed the Pioneer drone, which was the first fully militarized drone. The U.S. flew more than 300 drone missions in the first Gulf War. The second generation of military drones, named Predator drones, were rolled out in 2001 and were able to shoot stationary targets a few hundred miles away. By the end of 2001, Predator drones would target 525 non-human targets in Afghanistan, successfully taking out nearly 22% of them. These same drones were first used to execute a human target in Yemen in November 2002 by a pilot located in Djibouti, nearly 500 miles away. This is an example of a drone being used for target practice back in the 1950s. And this is an example of a modern-day Predator drone. The discussion of ethics and war seem to be at conflict with each other. The concept of a just war has been part of philosophical debates for centuries. St. Thomas Aquinas first proposed a set of ethical just war principles 700 years ago, which have been expanded over the years to 6 primary conditions necessary to justify military force. These concepts are at the heart of nearly every military treaty and rules of war that have been conducted ever since. They are: 1. The war must be for a just cause. 2. It must be lawfully declared by a lawful authority. 3. It should be for a good intention. 4. Military force should be an option of last resort. 5. There should be a reasonable chance of success. And 6. The means used should be in proportion to the ends that the war seeks to achieve. The use of drones supports the last 2 conditions of a just war and are therefore ethically justified. New technology is not new to warfare. Critics argued that using airplanes in war created an unfair advantage or took the pilots too far out from the front lines. These are some of the same arguments made against drones, but the fact is that their use, while still being fine-tuned, has given us tactical advantages in changing war climate. In terms of the proportional response condition of just war, using drones to target a small terrorist cell in a remote area of Afghanistan, rather than a full battalion of soldiers, makes far more sense ethically, not to mention saving lives and resources. My second argument supporting drone use is the fact that less lives are at risk in a drone operation than any other military option. It takes as little as 3 personnel to run a drone operation: 1 to pilot the drone, another to operate the cameras and sensors, and a third to maintain communication with the intelligence and our troops on the ground. Any other military option, such as airstrikes, full ground troops, or special forces, requires hundreds if not thousands of support personnel. And logistically speaking, all of these front lines and support personnel are physically located at or very near the front lines, as opposed to drone operators who can be hundreds or thousands of miles away. Close proximity to the war zone increases the chance of death or injury not only by combat, but by accidents, suicide bombers, snipers, or the dangerous weather conditions that exist in the current battlefields. This leads me to my third argument, which is that the cost savings of drone operations over any other military option is substantial. It is not ethical to spend unnecessary resources on a war when more cost-effective options are available. More than $4 trillion have been spent in Afghanistan and Iraq, where air and ground troops were used. Manned aircraft missions cost between $18,000 and $169,000 per hour to operate, making them over 40 times more expensive than drone missions. Lastly, drones produce far less collateral damage than any other traditional method of war. The civilian casualty rate was 40 to 67% during World War II, 70% during the Korean conflict, and 31% in the Vietnam War. While statistics are tough to attain due to military and CIA classifications, several sources report drone civilian casualty rates to be between 8 and 17%. The three main points against the use of drones are the armchair warfare argument, the concern that drones will make it easier to get involved in too many foreign conflicts, and the argument that drone use violates the rules of war. The first argument against drone use is the concern that individuals involved in operating drones and the commanders authorizing drone strikes are physically and psychologically removed from the war. This armchair warfare argument, as it has been termed, has been used throughout time to argue against any number of new military weapons. It is true that drones protect operators and their commanders from the dangers of the front lines, just like an airplane protects pilots and tanks protect foot soldiers. These advances in war technology are part of history, and ignoring them would put our military at a strategic disadvantage. As I reviewed in the conditions of a just war, we must participate in conflicts so we have a good chance of winning. Not using modern technology to fight would put us at a disadvantage. The enemy in the war on terror is well hidden and moves operations frequently. The precision that drones provide are unique in their ability to meet the challenges of this new war landscape. With this precision comes saving in lives lost and more efficient use of resources, benefits that can't be ignored. Another argument against drones is that the ease of drone use will make the U.S. more likely to get involved in foreign conflicts. President Obama addressed exactly this issue, and in 2013 developed his 5 presidential policy guidelines that, in conjunction with the just war policies that are already outlined and used by the U.S. military, would answer the question as to whether or not we would utilize drones for lethal action against a foreign target. They are 1. Near certainty that the target is present. 2. Near certainty that non-combatants will not be injured or killed. 3. Establishing that capture is not feasible at the time of the operation. 4. Assessment that the government of the country where the target exists cannot or will not effectively address the threat to U.S. persons. Or 5. Assess that no other reasonable alternatives exist to effectively address the threat.